everyone, and welcome back to another video, or welcome if you're new to my channel. I am so happy to have you here with me today. Today I've got a collection of creepy stories to share with you, and just a disclaimer, I suppose. These might become more frequent videos for the next couple of months or so because my job gets really busy in summer, which means I'm gonna have less time to do research for things like true crime and stuff, so there might be more like story collection videos for a little while. I hope that's okay. And then once I have more free time again, I will get back to, more deep dive type topics. But anyway, let's crack on with these 5 creepy stories that I have for you. So get cozy and let's start with the first story, which is called Ground Floor Problems. When I was in my early 20s, around 2003, I lived in a suburb of Atlanta that was generally considered safe. Since I was 18, I'd always lived on my own in various apartments. This was my first ground floor apartment, and I remember talking to my mum about it, and she warned me about the added dangers of living on the ground floor. But I shrugged it off because the excitement of not having to lift like 40 pounds of groceries up 3 flights of stairs was enough to offset any potential danger. Plus, I was 22 and I was like, what does my mum know anyway? I had a really good day job, but I loved to party, so I thought I'd get a second job at night at the local pub as a bar back. I got to hang out at my favourite spot. I got free drinks. I got to see my friends. It was a no-brainer. After my second night on the job, I went home at around 1:30 AM, flopped on the bed and went right to sleep. At some point in the night, I woke up because my cat was meowing, and I felt like someone was in the room. I turned my head to the left, and there was a man kneeling beside me at the bed. I began flailing. By this time, my cat was like screaming, and the man turned around and ran out of my room. I jumped out of my bed to run to the phone so I could call my friend. The guy ran, I don't really know where, but as I started to run, all my clothing fell off onto the ground. I was standing there naked. After getting over the initial shock, I went into my living room and saw the patio door open where he must have run out. Maybe that's also where he got in. My cat was walking in circles, panting and meowing. She was in just as much shock as I was. I went back to my room, still naked, and saw my kitchen shears on the floor. I looked at my clothing. This person was next to my bed, cutting my clothing off of me as I slept. I called the police and they came out to investigate and take a report. The CSI folks were there testing for prints. They brought in a canine unit and it was so surreal. I went to the jail and looked at lineups. I sat in the back of police cars to have follow-up interviews, and I looked at pictures, but I couldn't identify the person. I'll never forget the dark polo shirt and backwards cap he wore, but the face is a blur. Shortly after, there was a murder in my building. I got the F out of there and moved to a 4th floor apartment on the other side of town. What the actual fuck? Cutting your clothes off you? That's insane. This next story is called In the Basement with Me. When I was 16, I would sneak out of the house at night and get high and read a book. such a rebel, I know. There was an empty, foreclosed home next door, and I would get inside through the basement window well and smoke in the basement's bar area. One night it was raining pretty heavy, and I forgot to bring my lighter, so I went to get it, and it was still pouring when I got back. I set up a comfy place at the bar and turned on my camping lamp that I kept there. Then I started hearing noises upstairs. I turned off the light and sat still for a moment, and realised the sound was actually coming from the doorless room next to mine. I grabbed everything I could and made for the window. With half my body through the window, I heard someone running and shouting behind me. I felt someone touch me as I finished calling out, and I ran to my house, where I snuck in as quietly as possible. I heard sirens soon after I made it into my house, and I worried it was law enforcement that had caught me in the home. The sirens went on for a while into the night, and I barely slept. I learned the next morning that someone on the next block had burned his mother's home down with her in it, and he had been found breaking into a home later that night that was occupied several doors past the house that I had been in. It was likely him that was in the basement with me, and I still get scared thinking about it. Empty houses, they're just a scary place to be. This next story is called Look at Me. This happened my junior year of high school. One evening, my mother and stepfather had gone to some event. Maybe it was an extended dinner or a concert, it's hard to remember. I had stayed home to work on a paper that was due the next day because I was one of those kids who procrastinated until the last minute. And I spent the whole night working at the desk in my room. To give you a picture of my room, my desk faces a wall and sits next to a small window that's on the same wall. And from where I sit, my back faces the doorway. While I was working, I was wearing these great big headphones that I'd got for my birthday, the kind that are noise cancelling. My parents left the house at around 6 p.m, and the whole time they were gone, I just sat at my desk, blasting music through my headphones and writing my essay. Occasionally I would take breaks and watch the rain and lightning outside my window. We lived in Houston at the time, and there was a big storm that night, and I never left my desk. My parents returned at around 11 p.m. At some point late in the evening, I'd removed my headphones, so when my parents came home, coincidentally just a few minutes after I'd taken off the headphones, I clearly heard the garage door open, and my parents opened the door to my house. Seconds after I heard them enter, I hear my mother shout my name. "Adrian," she screams. "What on earth happened in here?" Confused, I get out of my chair and start walking through the house to them. There's only a small hallway that separates my room from the living room. But due to my rush to figure out why my mother was yelling, I paid little attention to the hall and to the house. After a few moments, I got to my parents, and my mum looks livid. She's pointing at the carpet, screaming, "Was this you? Did you have friends over?" I look down and the carpet is ruined. It's covered in muddy footprints. I frantically explained to her that I have no idea how those got there, and that I spent the whole night at my desk working on my paper. I watch as her face goes from anger to confusion to fear. We realize that someone else must have entered the house. Quickly, we scan the footprints, trying to make sense of the situation. It only takes us a few moments to figure out where they start. Our back door, which we usually left unlocked. Then we notice something else. The footprints started at the back door, but there were no footprints exiting the back door. We hear something pounding through our house. We hear the front door get torn open, then then slams shut with a wham. We all run into the garage and lock the door. My mum starts shouting at the police through the phone, "Please come quickly, someone's broken into our house." After what seems like hours, the police arrive. An officer stays with us in the garage as his partner goes through the house room by room. His partner tells us that it's safe to go back in, that there's no one in the house. Then she asks us a question. She asks whose room is down the hall to the left. My parents look at me and I tell the officer that it's mine. She asks us to follow her down the hall. As we go, it's easy to see that the footprints weave through my house from the back door. They go through the living room, through the small hallway and into my parents' room, which is down the hall to the right, but then turn around towards my room, and they stop at my doorway. Then the officer points at my door, which I had left open the whole night. On it, in a big black Sharpie, was written the following: 8:47, I see you. 8:53, you forgot to lock the back door. 8:54, you seem focused. 9:24, you turn around. 9:47, look at me. 10:15, look at me. 10:37, look at me. 10:49, look at me. For nearly 2 hours, someone stood in my doorway watching me. To this day, I shudder to think about what would have happened if I had ever turned around and actually looked at them. That's so scary, that's so creepy. Oh. Like writing notes about what someone's doing and when they're looking in your direction. This next story is called A Little Hole in the Wall. I was a news reporter right out of college, reporting on dismal topics in dismal towns. After 3 or 4 years of this, with the help of a friend, I landed an interview at an ad agency in Cincinnati. I got a job writing speeches and press releases and doing usual early pre-career grunt work. After stints in Alaska and West Virginia, Cincinnati seemed like a metropolis, and I picked a totally refinished first-floor apartment off Craigslist. It was $400 a month and not in a great part of town, but the landlord assured me it was changing. Besides, in West Virginia, I had been living in an old furniture factory for $300 a month instead, so this place sounded like paradise. My huge black dog, Dozer, and I drove down the street for the first time. There was a library, a record store, restaurants. I pulled up to my building a few blocks down from the retail stuff, and it's not really as described. The vestibule for the apartment is caked with grime. But I already have my key, and I open the door to find an almost eerily perfect apartment. Everything is brand new. The main room is in the front. White carpet, white walls, a refinished bathroom, a boring but tidy kitchen, huge windows and high ceilings. In the back is a small bedroom with a door leading out to a tiny 3-step back stoop and a little fenced backyard. Over the next couple of weeks, my friend helps me meet people, including her friend Alan. He's great. We kind of friend hang out and kind of boyfriend-girlfriend hang out, who knows. I have to drive around the state a lot for work, and he watches Dozer while I'm gone. I always go to his place to pick her up on my way home. The first time I do this, I come back into the apartment with my bags and race to the bathroom to pee. The seat is up and I fall straight into the toilet. I figure Alan left it up, so I unpack and I go running with Dozer. Whatever. A couple of weeks later, I have to travel again. I leave my keys with Alan so he can pick up Dozer after he gets off work. Same routine. I pick her up 2 days later and go straight home, Everything there is covered with a thick layer of dust, as if I'd been gone for years. It's covering my dining room table, the stray coffee cup I'd left there. It's sunk into my mum's old velvet couch. It's on my picture frames, on every nook and cranny of the huge yellow hutch against the wall. It's on the windowsills and on every handle of every drawer. Only the inside handle of the front door is perfectly clean, and the door is locked. I realise the white carpet is filled with even more dust. It's white on white, so I hadn't noticed. I get out the vacuum and fill 2 bags. I called the landlord and say that if he's renovating other parts of the building, they need to chill on the construction dust. He says he's short on funds at the moment, and my renovation was and will be the only one after that. I'm home for a few weeks and everything's fine. I figure the air ducts burped out some old gross stuff or something. When my next trip comes up, it's the usual. I come home with Tozer and the toilet seat's up. I teased Alan about it and he said, "I never used the bathroom in your apartment." I go out into the main room and the box of pictures from college I dragged around for a couple of years was on the dining room chair. Every spring break picture of a girl in a bathing suit, some sorority outfits, a towel, anything sexy. They were all neatly arranged in a grid on the dining room table. I can feel blood rushing in my ears. I walk through every room, look under the bed, open the front hall closet with a pair of kitchen shears in my hand. Nothing. I call Alan, remembering that I don't know him all that well, not really, and ask him about the pictures he'd seen. "Nothing like this," he says, "and doing such a thing would be hella creepy." His words. I'm so afraid that I can barely hear him. I call the landlord to see who else has keys, but he's not picking up. I call over and over. I don't want to leave Tozer there. I've just been super rude to Alan and I don't want to sound insane, so I'm just standing in the apartment. I end up taking a picture of the pictures on the dining room table with my camera to prove to myself that it happened. I clean it up, make a sad dinner, and spend the whole night talking to everyone I can think of on my flip phone. It was 5 minutes past 8 when I fell asleep. The doors were locked, Tozer's on the end of the bed, and every light is on. I'm in the office or at home with Tozer all the rest of the week. Every time I walk into my apartment, I'm terrified, but it's just her waiting, wagging her tail, and I get cool about Alan again. After all, my friends know him. He's fun. He doesn't seem like he would be weird. Still, the next time I travel, I drop Tozer off at his house and I don't leave him a key. He insists on coming with me when I go back to the apartment. Sitting neatly in the middle of the back stoop is a small black rectangle. I bend down and pick it up. It's the remote control for my fancy camera that I use as a reporter, and under it is a sheet of paper. It's a printout of the picture I took of the grid of swimsuit pictures that were left on my dining table. Alan goes into the house for me. Everything is locked tight, and my camera, the most valuable item I own, is gone. But the living room is covered with dust. However, the front doorknob is pristine. I don't clean anything. I leave and go to Alan's place where I drink as much as possible. And I called the landlord again. He says he has a key in Seattle and I have a key in Cincinnati, and that's all he knows of. I call the non-emergency police, but the police are swamped in 2005 Cincinnati. They tell me a neighbour probably has a copy of my key, and that all the Northside landlords are grifters, so I should get my own deadbolt and keep my valuables locked in the trunk of my car. They said they'd take a report if I'm willing to drive to the station. I buy deadbolts for the front and back doors, and I spend as little time in the apartment as possible. I try food gone. After this, it's only a day and a half until I have to go away again, so I ask Alan to drop in and check on Dozer, do her walks, keep her company, and nothing happens. The trip after that, Alan takes Dozer and everything's normal. I check the mail, still nothing but junk circulars, same as the past 2 months. Nothing I order arrives, so I start having things delivered to my office. But this time, when I open the front hall closet to put my coat away, there's the entire past 2 months of mail, online orders, and packages from my mum and faraway friends. All my bills, they're crushed open, ransacked, soaking wet, and streaked with dirt. I just ran out into the street on this sunny day, and everything's normal, but I can't hear, I'm too scared. And slowly I realise that the street is busy and my huge dog is out here, and I get myself together enough to hold her collar and sit on the curb. I turn around to face the building. There's a face at the very top window in the attic that sinks below view. Other stuff disappears over time. A collection of coins my dad had given me from the places he'd visited. More food. Any drop of alcohol I buy. But nothing ever happens to me. No one breaks in when I'm home. There's no menacing figures at the window, no creepy feelings at night, and the face in the attic starts to feel like a dream. I even go up there. There's just a bunch of people's extra stuff and storage. There's gotta be someone with a key, I decide. The longer things are normal, the more it fades. But I barely sleep, and it makes everything feel even dreamier. And then one night, I'm getting dressed cute to go out. I use the blackness of the long windows to check my reflection. I put on my shoes and one turns white. It's dust again. It's not all over like before. It's concentrated around my huge hutch. I get out the vacuum and get to work teetering in heels, but it's piled around the side of the hutch, which is hard to move. I turn off the vacuum, brace my legs against the couch, and push the hutch out toward the centre of the room. In the wall is a hole the size of a man. The dust, of course, had been from the sawing. My company put me up in a hotel after that until I could move, and my landlord let me break the lease. Later, during the process of getting a felony conviction, I learned that 2 men did all that stuff specifically to scare me, that they sat peeping through the gap at the back of the hutch for months. One of them lived in the apartment next door. The wall opened into a little pocket between the apartment stairwell and the basement. My neighbour described it all for me in court. Smiling, they watched me check myself out in the full-length mirror, cook meals, watch sad movies, flirt with guys on the phone, do sit-ups, talk to Dozer, have the occasional cry, go to the bathroom, everything. They kept a hoard of snacks from my kitchen in the wall to enjoy while they passed the time. My long kitchen knife was found in the wall, plus a bony knife I didn't recognise. But they didn't want to come in while Dozer was home, and I was never without her. Every morning on the way to work for 6 months, I'd driven past a wanted billboard featuring one of their faces. I have never lived alone again. Seriously, what is wrong with people? Like, what do you mean that you sawed a hole in the wall so you can sit and watch some poor girl? Crazy. This last story is called He Never Left. 2 years ago, I got severely, awfully sick, probably with the flu. I didn't go to work for the entire week. It was all I could do just to keep myself drinking liquids and soup and shuffling to bed. The worst part was my husband was travelling for business, so I was all alone. Just me and my black cat, Libby. I was so sick that even watching a movie felt like too much effort. So during the day I was just lying in bed, dozing in and out, sometimes looking at a book with Calvin and Hobbes, and Libby was with me, sitting on the bed next to me the whole time. The second or third afternoon while laying there, I suddenly and very clearly heard strange noises, like someone wheezing and shuffling around. Since the room had been completely silent, with no music or TV, I could hear it perfectly. It sounded like whatever was making the noise was in the room with me. So as soon as I heard it, I sat up and looked around, and my heart was pounding. But nothing, just my bedroom. But Libby was also sitting up, and her ears were perked, so it was clear that she heard it too. Libby started like meow hissing as if in response to the noises, and I could no longer clearly make them out. I should mention here that ever since we moved into that house, like 6 months prior, Libby had acted strange sometimes, making loud mew hissing noises like this for no apparent reason. We had even taken her to the vet because this behaviour was so unlike her, but they couldn't find anything wrong. I said maybe she was feeling anxious from the move and I would give it time. But we would often find her upset and meow hissing when we would come home from work, and it would be a while until she settled back down. Libby left the bedroom and went to the kitchen, still making those noises, and she stopped in there for at least an hour. I was freaked out, but I was also really sick and tired, so I just ended up falling back to sleep. When I woke up, everything was quiet again, and Libby was next to me on the bed, sleeping. You might think those noises would have made me too scared to stay there, but I somehow convinced myself it was nothing. Just the house settling or something like that. I was too tired to think about it, to be honest. I was basically like, whatever it is, I'm sure it's nothing. I don't believe in God, and I tend not to get too scared, so I was just like, don't get worked up, it's nothing. I didn't even mention it to my husband when he texted me to see how I was doing. Plus, I was so tired and out of it, all I wanted to do was sleep. But the next day, at mid-morning, I was awake in bed, kind of petting Libby and not really thinking about anything, when I saw her go really tense and her ears stick up. Then I heard it too. Noises. Like really clear this time. Like it was in the room with me. Something moving and what sounded like laboured breathing and wheezing. Actually, this time the hair on my arm stood up because the noise sounded so close, and it sounded like a human. Libby started hissing and meowing again, really loud and incessantly. I got out of bed and started getting dressed. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I was just really freaked out when suddenly, clear as day, a male voice really loudly and angrily says, "Shut the fuck up, you piece of shit." I freaked out. I grabbed the still hissing Libby and put her in her carrier, grabbed my purse and ran out of the door, not stopping until I got to my car in the driveway. Then I booked it out of there. I was basically hyperventilating. I was so scared. I called my husband to tell him what happened, and then I checked into a hotel. My husband called his 2 brothers who live in the same town, and they went to our house to see if they could find anyone there or anything like that, but nothing, and no noises. One of them said maybe I was having an auditory hallucination from being so sick. I stayed at the hotel until my husband returned a few days later, but before he picked me up, he decided to go into the house with his brothers to do another, more thorough examination because he didn't think it was a hallucination. So the 3 of them looked in all the rooms, even under the beds, and they see no sign of anyone being there, no sign of forced entry, nothing. But eventually, one of them gets the idea to check the crawl space. They don't find anyone, but they do find blankets, pillows, empty chip bags, porno magazines, and liquor bottles. And some of those liquor bottles were empty, and some were filled with urine. We had actually had the crawl space completely redone after the inspection, so it had LED lights all along the inside and it's pretty well insulated with plastic from any water. So as soon as they turned on the lights, they could see that someone had been there. It looked like most of the items were positioned under the side with our bedroom. That's why the noises seemed so near, because they really were. They called the police, who came over and wrote a report and took pictures. We decided to stay with my husband's brother's family for a while because I was too freaked out to stay at home. At the advice of the cops, my husband set up a hidden camera in the crawl space to see if the guy came back. He didn't for several days, and so we thought maybe he had figured out that we'd found his spot. But then it was time to watch the footage. My husband watched it. I couldn't bring myself to do it, so instead I sat next to him at the table, listening. He said, "Oh my God, I know him, look." So I do. It's the assistant of the guy who renovated our crawl space. I remember him because they were there for a week working on it. And even back then, he gave me the creeps. It turns out that once the cops pursued it from here and arrested him, he had been fired from the job not long after assisting with our house. He didn't tell his family about it and was instead spending his days, at least sometimes, in the crawl spaces of the houses that he had helped to renovate. To think my cat Libby was trying to tell me all along that something was wrong. And that is the last story, and I have to say, animals know when something's off. If you have a pet and they all of a sudden start behaving weird, if they're not ill, then something else could be happening. So creepy, all these people that creep into people's houses. I don't think that happens too often in the UK. I think in America it seems like you guys have more things like crawl spaces and basements and really big attics, whereas we don't really have basements here anymore unless you live in a really old house. And attics aren't usually big enough for someone to find their way in. So I think that happens less here. It always seems to be in America that these things happen. And I guess it's because you guys have a bit more space than us, but it's so creepy.